Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place in the special military operation during the previous 12 hours probably. And the most interesting updates are coming from, of course, South Ukraine area, from Zaporozhye, from Dnipro River, from Vimethka tactical bridgehead. And first let's start from the left side, and then we'll go step by step to right to Artemiev. And the first thing I would like to discuss with you, the Dnipro River. This is the video of the results of destroyed Kakhovka Dam. So currently you see the video of this lake, of this water reservoir before that explosion, and right in a few seconds you're going to see the results of that attack and the results of them destroyed. As you can see, currently there are almost no water inside of this lake water reservoir. As you can see, this is a very big disaster, and probably this disaster, the consequences of this disaster, the people from this region will face for the next probably 10 years if something urgent is not going to happen within the next a year or two. Another video from the other bank of the same area. So this is the results. As you can see, there are no more water. There is just a very light, very low, very small river right in front of your monitors, and very far in somewhere in the horizon. So as you can see, probably more than 50 or 60% of entire water left this region, and this is a very big disaster. Now let's move further and let's little bit talk about the situation on the ground. After a few attempts, after a few days of heavy clashes with 47th and 65th mechanized brigades and probably 33rd mechanized brigades in the vicinity of Areakov, the Ukrainians took a decision to make a small regrouping. They haven't managed to establish control over the first defense belt in this area, and we saw a lot of video of destroyed Ukrainian vehicles and so on. The only thing that we can say for sure that there are still continuous artillery duels. The Ukrainians try to using distant mining methods to mine the Russians' roads, and the Russians are doing the same, trying to mine and refresh the old minefields and so on. Very interesting updates are coming from Vimethka tactical bridge. Before we go to Vimethka, one small joke about this Areakov on the front line. You know that when we were talking about Artemiev, we were calling Bakhmut and so on, Bakhmut front line or something like this. Marinka we call Marinka. Areakov, we are talking about the battle between Rabotin and Areakov. When talking about Vimethka, we are calling this area Vimethka tactical bridgehead, and the Russians started joking about the area in the south of Areakov, and currently they're calling this area Bradley Square. So like Trafalgar Square, I don't know, Independence Square. So currently this bridgehead on the south of Areakov, the Russians called Bradley Square because of dozens and probably dozens destroyed armored vehicles of Western production in this area. So I believe that we will call this area Bradley Square as well in the future. Now we are moving to Areakov, to Vimethka tactical bridgehead, and the Russians published another video of destroying another destroyed convoy of the Ukrainians who were heading in direction of Neskuchne. I'll remind you that previous few days there were very heavy fightings, very fierce fightings for the hill of 178.2 hill. So that was strategical hill in this area, and basically who controlled this hill can control the all of the settlements that goes along the river from Staromikhailivka to Velika Novosilovka. I'm talking about the settlements like Vimethka, like Neskuchne, like Blagodatne, like Urozhaine. All these settlements we saw clashes during the previous days. And to tell the truth, the Russian sources confirms that at least one of the Russian sources, Ryber, I believe you heard this resource of information. They reported that as a result of fierce fightings during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians managed to enter the settlements like Neskuchne and the settlements like Blagodatne. Furthermore, they are saying that Starozhova probably is in the gray zone. So basically, as soon as the Ukrainians during the previous days managed to capture the hill 178.2, and this hill is located exactly in this area. So this is the hill, this one. So let's update this map for better understanding. As soon as the Ukrainians establish control over this hill, after that they establish physical and fire and visible control over the settlements like Neskuchne, Starozhova and Blagodatne. After that, the Ukrainians made some kind of air intelligence like using satellites, using drones and so on. They discovered that all the Russian positions, and they attacked to the south, at least in this area, and of course they attacked to the south from Vimethka in direction of Starozhovo. And the Russians, there were no fightings according to Rybar, according to the Russian sources. As soon as the Russians understood that they're completely under Ukrainian control, artillery control, fire control, they took a decision to step back, and basically, according to the Russian sources, the Ukrainians entered empty like settlements. So basically, by 11th of June of 2023, the Ukrainians managed to establish control at least over this area. So we'll see probably this salient, according to the sources we have, has been cut off by the Ukrainians. And furthermore, the sources are saying that Ukrainians during the previous day managed to develop the bridgehead, let's say, along this river that goes from Velika Novoselovka to Novodonetska, and using this bridgehead, the Ukrainians attack with their armored fist in direction of Urozhaina. And currently, so using the armored fist, they attack in this area. Let's take a look one more time at the map. So as you can see, currently the area in front of Urozhaina, between, let's say, the fields between Urozhaina, Novodonetsk and Kirmenchik are in the gray zone, and basically the next few days we're going to see fierce fightings in this area. And the main thing that Ukrainians are trying to achieve is, if the Ukrainians are able to establish control over Urozhaina, over the settlements, of course by this attack they will be able to cut supply roads that goes to Rovnopol and to Makarovka, and the Russians will be forced to step further back to the south, and the Ukrainians will continue developing their bridgehead. So I believe that probably the Russians during the next days will try to solve the issue with the bridgehead between Starozhovo, Blagodatne, Novodonetsk. This looks like another artillery salient and a very perfect position for the Russians to use distance mining methods and artillery attacks and helicopters attacks as well. Anyway, the situation is getting worse for the Russians in this area. There is no crisis, no big problems, but anyway, we see that Ukrainians, as a result of bloody attacks, were able to capture a few settlements and to improve their bridgehead in this area. The Russians published another video, very interesting video from the vicinity of Nivolska, this area that Ukrainians were using and still use to coordinate their attacks against the peace settlement Donetsk. And the Ukrainians published the video how they get close to the trenches using few Humvees and few squads of stormtroopers. And basically the Russians are saying that when talking about the trenches on the left side of this video, there was just one Russian soldier who was holding these positions, and as you can see now, you see on the left side, he left the trenches probably to analyze the situation. He saw the enemies starting fire, but as soon as he understand that there are so many soldiers, he took a decision to step back. The destiny of that warrior is unknown, and later the Ukrainians were moving closer and closer to this position. Now they're starting throwing grenades in those trenches, and probably the Ukrainians with this massive attack managed to capture those positions, and but one more time, the destiny of that warrior is unknown. And now we're moving further to Artemiev, where the Ukrainians during the previous days increased the pressure, increased their attempts to attack and to establish control over Berkhovka, Yahidne from on the northern flanks, and Klishchievka, Andreevka on the southern flanks. Another picture, another confirmation from Rybar we received about this area. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the video of the Ukrainian attempt using their tanks to attack the Berkhovka or to support the forces, but basically based on this video you will see that the Russians managed to return control over this area, over this small forest line, and currently the main clashes are located in this area. Nobody are able, neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are able to establish 100% control over this line. So basically, as I understand, this area is in the gray zone, but anyway, this was a very nice defense positions, and currently, no matter that this area used to be under Russian control, currently this area is under Ukrainian control, or at least in the gray zone. So basically the Russians did lost some nice positions in this area. The Ukrainians continue attacking, continue pushing, and probably we're going to see more updates from this territory. Another interesting update, that the Russian intelligence on the ground in this area reported that a lot of forces from Konstantinovka and the Kramatorsk, a lot of forces arrived in this direction from the strategical reserve. So probably the Ukrainians, as a result of a few days clashes, managed to break a little bit the situation, to develop a little bit their bridgehead, and probably the Ukrainians, maybe they got some information that they need to increase the pressure, and currently the Western weapons have been redeployed in this area, and the Ukrainians will try to make more attacks, more attempts using the Western weapon. Anyway, we need to understand one important thing, that all this attack from the Ukrainian side has no value for the Ukrainians, because the deadline for the Ukrainians is 20th of June, when the NATO summit is going to take place in the Baltic states, and the Ukrainians need to show any results before that date, and probably the Ukrainians will show the progress in Vimethka tactical bridgehead, those settlements, as a result, as a progress. And currently, if you are able to follow the Ukrainian sources, they have already shown these results. They need a little bit more, and that's it. Now the Ukrainians will attack only in those directions where they can. There is no talks about strategical value, tactical value. The only value is media value, and to capture at least anything that they can to capture, because all those settlements that were captured by the Ukrainians have no value from tactical or strategical perspective. Furthermore, if you take a look at the Vimethka bridgehead, you see that the first real defense belt is located very far to the south in this area, and currently the Ukrainians attack something like, not a gray zone, this area is under Russian control, but according to the open source information we have, there are even no real trenches and fortifications on Vimethka tactical bridgehead. So probably the Russians from the beginning understood that probably they will not be able to hold this territory, so there is no need and real necessity to invest like resources to create fortifications in this area, and they paid more attention to the south area, and the Ukrainians haven't even got this first defense belt on this, particularly on this territory. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.